of many presentations before finishing this panel with mentorship as well. Thank you. The floor is yours, Professor Wajih.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Dr. Ameliti. And of course, I feel at home. See, I spent 9 years teaching this institution, which is, as always, dear to my heart. And see many colleagues whom I had the honor and the pleasure of working with, both faculty and staff. Well, for students, I didn't have the honor of teaching any of the present here, but I might interest some in joining us in SUS. We have the best MA program in literature. Sorry about that. And would love to see students from Kairouan. Okay, you're not mad at me. Okay. Today I would like to talk about hybridity in the medieval manuscripts, and it won't be very heavy because I have some audiovisual material which I hope I'll be able to play in a minute. The title of my presentation is Hybridity of in the Medieval Manuscript Matrix. And after the introduction, I will discuss four main ideas. The material hybridity of the manuscript, collaborative authorship, hybrid authorship of the manuscript, then hybrid media and marginalia, that is how in the medieval manuscript we can find not just written scripts but also visual and even audio materials. And marginalia refers to the marginal references, comments, doodles that are only present in manuscripts. Then I will address the politics of hybridity in the medieval manuscript after having discussed a few ideas related to poetics. So I will discuss the hybridity in relation with representations of the racial and gender others. And my conclusion will be about contemporary use, the contemporary relevance of manuscript studies and interest in medieval manuscripts in general. So what is the medieval manuscript matrix? You are familiar with the term manuscript, which refers to the codex book or to the roll, which are the two formats of medieval books, basically. The manuscript matrix is a phrase coined by the book historian Stephen G. Nichols to refer to the fundamental hybridity of the medieval manuscript, in the sense that whatever is in the manuscript relates to everything else. Author, scribe, material, production, reception, digitization, which is of course a more, which is a contemporary innovation in the field. So manuscript matrix replaces the words manuscript whenever we want to stress the hybridity of the manuscript, the interactions between its elements. And I will not read everything, not to bore you, but I'll summarize a few of the notes that I borrowed from one of my articles here, and which I hope will be included in the final version later on. Now, let me start by talking about the material hybridity of the manuscript matrix. I won't read, but you're welcome to follow from these notes. I'll just summarize. The manuscript, the medieval manuscript, contains everything you can think of. What is a manuscript made of? It is primarily made up of animal skins, which are dried, stretched, treated using vegetable tanning and vegetable procedures. So there you have animal skins treated using vegetables, using vegetable substances, potions, and then these are cut into by foliums and organized into choirs. The choirs make up books, and these books, which are made of animal skins and refined using vegetable potions, are then inscribed using ink. Now, ink comes from minerals and from insects. This is the sad reality, unfortunately. Some very expensive inks were taken from crushed precious stones, not diamonds, but you might think of other, well, semi-precious stones rather, and from vegetables, but also from crushed insects. So there you have animals, vegetables, insects, and then humans, obviously. Now, the process of producing a medieval manuscript was collaborative. And it was collaborative in the sense that I will develop in a minute, just after commenting on the scan of a page, an actual manuscript page from the National Library in Vienna. This depicts a regular folio from a manuscript page, from a manuscript. And what you can see here is a number of pilgrim badges actually sewn into the folio. You see, here we have the materiality of the manuscript, which is complicated by not just media, where we have a decorated initial, the decorated initial O, plus the script, plus the rubrication, the red writing on top, as you can see. But then we also have these badges, which are souvenirs that Christian pilgrims collected or bought or were presented with when they visited shrines. You see, pilgrimage was a Christian practice that was very fashionable in the Middle Ages. And so here we have some actual badges made of wood, but also from different kinds of metals, which are, as you can see, sewn into the animal hide. And this shows the material complexity of the medieval manuscript. There are other examples of not just pilgrims' badges, but in some cases precious stones, which are encrusted into the manuscript. We have different creative ways that medieval book makers came up with to valorize the books, because books were among the most precious possessions that people had in the Middle Ages, and there is no end to human creativity when it comes to manuscript production, except that sadly a lot has been lost to natural elements and to human predators. A lot has been lost. Speaking of which, this reminds me of the many incidents, the many sad incidents that we hear about from time to time about the mysterious disappearance of some Tunisian manuscripts and their miraculous reappearance in London and Abu Dhabi and places where relics or historical relics are sold without any issue. Now, this is a very short video about the structure, the making of the medieval manuscript. It should play sound, but I'm not sure if this is. No, I don't hope so. No, I hope there won't be a bad surprise. Oops. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe it's not worth it. I don't know. Okay. Let's see if it works. Otherwise, we'll just move on. I don't think so.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
Okay, you may want to use the mic with the audio of the computer instead of the cable. يكونوا مع اللاوdspeaker بتاع البي.
No, there's no sound at all.
at all.
Anyway, sorry, it's okay. I can just explain what's going on here. It's not a big deal. So this is a very short video which explains how medieval manuscript books not rolls, but medieval manuscript books were produced using, as you can I can manage, thank you. Using folded animal hides which produce parchment, and then these are bound together into quires, and then quires are bound together to get the book. Now, this is a bifolium that is, two folios basically, and this is organized into recto and verso, so you will have basically the same page number, but then it depends whether it is recto or verso. This is why I will keep referring to page numbers, not sequentially, but whether they come at the front of or at the back of the manuscript. If it's at the front, then it's recto. If it's at the back, then it's verso. Now, let us move on to the process of authorship. Today, we like to think about authorship as a one author enterprise, or in some cases, say in the proceedings of the published proceedings of a conference like this one, as a collective book, for example. But in the Middle Ages, the process was hybrid and much more complex than the one we have today. Why? Because we need, first of all, the artisan, the one who collects animal hides, who takes care of the processing of these primary materials, of cleaning, of the application of the substances that will make the hide suitable for writing. We also have the artisan who produces different colors. We have the goldsmith who produces some golden, very expensive, obviously, very luxurious material, the golden ink, which is used especially in Bibles and in Gospels and commentaries on religious books. And then we have the author, who is rarely an author in the modern sense. The author can refer to anything from scribe to the enthusiastic student to the subsequent user, anyone who uses the manuscript in the Middle Ages could add things, take things out, erase things, erase sometimes whole pages, add new remarks, sometimes even cut parts of the manuscript and replace them with others. So the process of authorship was complex. It primarily involved an author, but it also involved a scribe or a group of scribes in a scriptorium, and usually monasteries. Later on, towards the end of the Middle Ages, we have the development of special guilds in towns that began making a business out of the otherwise more religious enterprise of writing and copying books. So we have the scribe, we have the author, and the author here is very complex idea, because the author may not be known at all. The author may be more than one hand, maybe more than one person. And sometimes we know, as in the case of the Romance of the Rose, sometimes we know. We know that the same text was written by two authors, as in the case of the Romance of the Rose, began by Guillaume de Loris and continued by Jean de Meun. This applies also to the scribes. This applies to users, readers, editors, users who act as editors, who feel free to add and to delete, to cut down and to paste on the manuscript. The manuscript was very flexible, and it was flexible. It was a very complex product of a vibrant culture. And here I have two manuscripts, two excerpts from the same manuscript from Al-Hariri's Maqamat, which is a copy of which is one of the best copies. Actually, is in the BNF in Paris. Now, here we have two illuminations, two miniatures. The miniature is just that, the painting on a medieval codex book. That is an illumination in miniature, a drawing, if you wish. Now, what we see here is, and I hope it's clear, what we see here is the is a man surrounded by standing up people. Now, we might be tempted to see this as the poet or as the author, but he's not. In fact, he's the patron. He is the man who ordered this book to be written. And this is such a big deal. This is such that is producing, ordering a book, can be compared today to perhaps ordering a Jaguar. And you know, it was such an expensive thing to order. So the illuminator, the artist, honored the patron with this frontispiece. Now, the second illumination is, you guessed it, is the author Al-Hariri, at least as the artist portrayed him. And as you can see, here we have members of the audience not sitting down, but standing up. And you see that the dissemination process of the medieval manuscript was mainly, was significantly through the oral medium. So you see that the author is not reading from a book, but improvising and reading his maqamat aloud to this eager audience who are standing up. Now, later on, individual members of the audience would recall and would write down these stories, but then they have to be the same, and they never actually were the same. Hence, in some cases, we have different copies of the same manuscript, but these different copies are significantly different in content and in form. So no two medieval manuscripts are the same, no matter how similar they might appear. Now, to the more funny, perhaps, but it's not as funny as, it's not always as funny. Here we move to the hybrid media and marginalia in excerpts from the medieval manuscript matrix. You remember I said that the medieval manuscript was something that had value. It was the repository of knowledge. It was a status sign. It showed the wealth of the monastery in which it was located, or the church where it was used, or the aristocratic household where it was treasured. Books were very precious, very expensive, and more often than not, they were ordered. So you didn't find an author, a scribe, just deciding to copy a book. Usually, these books, especially here, I'm not talking about religious books. Obviously, we always have we have many copies of the Bible, many copies of commentaries on the Bible, many copies of patristic writings. So yes, these are numerous, and many monks in monasteries, many in monastic scriptoria volunteered to copy them. But here I'm talking mainly about manuscripts in general. This includes religious books, but also secular books. Now, you might be surprised to know that drawings like this one, could be found equally in religious books, in Bibles, and in romances, in scientific treatises, in any genre you might think of. Now, you say here we have a monk, as you guessed. We have a monk who is at the same time a snail monk. Why so? Why this porous barrier between the human and the animal? This is one of the questions I'm trying to address in this part. Now, in this detail from the provocative Goddesden Psalter, we have a man watching a mass in a historiated initial. So this basically is a detail of a man who is half plant, half human, a man who springs from this plant and who eavesdrops on the mass, the religious ceremony that is going on. This is an excerpt from a psalter. This is a religious book, a private book of devotion. So it can appear very bizarre to have these marginal drawings, which showcase a great measure of fluidity between the human, the animal, and the floral. Now, in this marginal doodle from the Bible, you see a sympathetic fish walking on 2 feet. Now, why so? Why should we have this marginal drawing in a copy of the Bible? Now, this is a detail from the Wonders of the East. The creature that you can see is called a blemmy. The blemmy was a headless man, a monster of sorts, and well, I apologize if it's a bit offensive maybe to some. I didn't think